If you follow me on Instagram, then you might have caught that story that I posted, but if you didn't, I have to tell you about how much I was stressing out trying to secure tickets for this movie. Full transparency as usual. I was not going to watch this movie. I'm not caught up with all the Japanese Godzilla movies, so I wasn't planning on seeing this one. Then I saw a TikTok 2 days after the movie was released, and that TikTok was explaining that this movie is set in its own continuity and it has no connections to the previous Godzilla films. Perfect! Now, because I waited 2 whole days, there are no showings in IMAX, and believe you me, I would have gone the 50 minutes to go see this movie in IMAX, but it was a showtime in the middle of the week and my honey and I work early mornings. So I was checking Cinemarks in the area and I bought tickets to see it in XD on Tuesday the 5th at 6 p.m. There were a couple of showtimes for XD, but I couldn't see any showtimes online after Thursday the 7th. So the sooner the better, right? Now I'm feeling good. Tickets are secured and I'm eager to see this movie. I got out of work on Tuesday and I noticed a refund email from Cinemark. I'm worried now because when I look at the seats, there are seats sold, but I can see my 2 seats that I just got refunded and they're available. I try to buy them again and I get an error message. I called the theater and it turns out there was a mistake with the schedule. The Boy and the Heron is supposed to be shown in XD, not Godzilla. He assured me that they would be adding showtimes for that weekend, and when I asked if there would be XD showtimes, he said unfortunately not. I wasn't mad, I mean it is what it is, but based on what I'd heard about the movie up to that moment, I was surprised that the XD run seemed so short-lived. At this point, I am sad and the wind has been knocked out of my sails. I'm thinking I'm gonna have to watch this movie in the standard format, which, let's be real, there's nothing wrong with. I just like how big and loud the movies are with the premium formats. Anyway, I am bummed out with multiple tabs open on my laptop from multiple theaters on multiple days trying to find this movie in XD. And I finally did. It was at a theater we'd never been to before, but I was like, screw it. It'll be a nice little adventure, so I bought the tickets and I have to say, the movie is worth all the trouble and heartbreak I went through trying to get the tickets. Hi friends, welcome back, or just welcome if you're new here. I'm here as a friend to give you my spoiler-free thoughts on the latest movie I watched in theaters or cozied up at home. If you're looking for my thoughts on a specific movie, DM me on Instagram, let me know in the comment section on YouTube, or let me know on the podcast. Tune in for new episodes every Friday, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and follow on the podcast. Definitely follow the podcast, you guys, if you haven't already, because I'm not actually going to be posting any more episodes on YouTube for the rest of the month. Stay until the end of the video so you know what I'm going to be watching and what we're going to be talking about next. In keeping with the honesty, I'm a fan of Godzilla. I've seen some of the older black and white Japanese films, but it has been years since I've seen any of those movies. I love the American Godzilla films, but let's be real. I don't think it's a story they should be telling, but if they insist, they should consider taking notes. Let's get into today's episode on Godzilla -1. Japan is already devastated by the war when a new crisis emerges in the form of a giant monster. Before I dive in, if you're someone that ever checks out the links that I share, maybe somebody that's just really interested in Godzilla, or someone that is as mind blown by this movie as I still am, then if you're gonna check out any of the links that I listed in the description, please check out the last link I posted. It's an interview with the director Takashi Yamazaki, and I think it's always cool to read interviews or to watch interviews. He talks about so many things, from bringing Godzilla back to its roots symbolically and literally, to hope and human resilience. Again, check that interview out on The Verge if you want some clear and concise talk about the movie. If you're still here, then you're stuck with me and my overflowing emotions about this movie. I can't keep it in. Usually, I think you can catch my drift early on. You feel me. You get where I'm going, right? But I don't come out and actually say it until more toward the end of the episode. I'm gonna say it right now. This movie is a masterpiece. If you think I am wrong, don't at me in the comments. Don't say anything to me. I am not listening. Look, this movie managed to make me love something I hate in not just a Godzilla movie, not just a kaiju movie, but monster movies in general. 9 out of 10 times, I cannot stand the human characters and I want more of the monster. Would y'all believe that I wasn't even that mad that Godzilla didn't have a ton of screen time? Because I was so invested in the human characters. Yeah, imagine my surprise. Before I talk too far away from the word kaiju, if you're not familiar with the term, according to Wikipedia, kaiju, meaning strange beast, is a Japanese term that is commonly associated with media involving giant monsters, a subgenre of science fiction that was created by Eiji Tsuburaya and Ishiro Honda, the special effects director and director, respectively, of the 1954 Godzilla film, which is often regarded as the first kaiju film. Now, getting back to Godzilla, when the kaiju is on screen, it's wildly impactful, and I'm not gonna lie, I was left not wanting to see it again. Those incredible action moments that the American films make look so cool, -1 makes them horrific and extremely distressing. In that Verge interview, the director says that his favorite Godzilla is the original from the first movie. He goes on to say that, quote, "That Godzilla specifically represented war and our collective anxieties about nuclear arms. That idea is still present in a lot of depictions of Godzilla, but I've also felt like a lot of his original essence has faded over time. So I wanted to bring some of that original intention behind Godzilla back and more to the forefront." I want to go back just a little bit and talk about what Godzilla represents. Maybe you already know, and I'm just going to say a bunch of stuff you're already aware of, but maybe someone out there isn't aware of what this kaiju represents. If you don't already know, Godzilla stands as a reflection of the era in which it was born, deeply influenced by the aftermath of World War II. The original Godzilla film was released in 1954 and was influenced by the collective trauma and fears of the Japanese people stemming from the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, as well as the Lucky Dragon 5 incident in 1954. Now, I'm sure we all know about the horrific bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but I, for one, didn't know about the Lucky Dragon 5 incident. On March 1st, 1954, the United States conducted a test explosion of a nuclear warhead on Bikini Atoll in the South Pacific. A cloud of radioactive ash caused by the blast engulfed a Japanese fishing boat, Lucky Dragon No. 5, 85 miles away from the test area. The tuna later unloaded from the ship were contaminated with radiation, and radioactive rain fell over Japan. The Lucky Dragon incident terrified the Japanese people with the vision of nuclear holocaust, a horror which they had faced only a decade before at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, maybe that was a bit of a rant, and I know I don't usually get into stuff like that, but I think it's extremely important to understand the real history and symbolism. I will say, I am all for thick American action Godzilla, trust me. But when you consider the origin of Godzilla and what it represents, I mean, personally, there's a want and necessity for this kind of story, the story that -1 tells. Speaking of story, we're moving right along. I didn't actually know what this movie was about, I'm not gonna lie. Like I said at the top of the video, I didn't actually plan on watching this movie. I think I'd seen a trailer, that was about it. So when I went in knowing what I knew from TikTok, 1, that this movie is a masterpiece, 2, it's set in its own continuity, and 3, there was a $15 million budget. So imagine my surprise when we got a deeply emotional story with human characters that I was extremely invested in. I didn't realize the setting of the movie in terms of date, so I think it was really surprising to see the effects of war and the aftermath. Usually war is so much action and rigged explosions. Maybe it's the state of the world right now coupled with these types of stories, but seeing the fallout is extremely impactful. I feel like we've gotten a little bit too far into the episode and it's probably too late, but I feel like I owe it to myself to remind you guys that I'm not good with pronouncing names and all I can do is my best. Godzilla -1 follows Koichi Shikishima, and I'm not gonna lie, what got me was the idea of survivor's guilt. This is a quite heavy element that is at the forefront throughout the entire movie. Another element the movie presents is, of course, war. But not just that, but the role Shikishima plays and the impact he has, not just on those around him, but himself. The idea of war, the ones that were in the war or maybe were impacted by it, and the ones that are eager to get in on the action, so to speak. And seeing that dynamic play out is very, very interesting. My favorite thing that comes with stories of loss is forgiveness and hope. Maybe it's that life experience talking, but there's something healing about experiencing these feelings through story. Let's be real, there are so many heavy topics that this movie tackles. These are just the few that I picked out, so I didn't start rambling, which I think I might have anyway. So remember that $15 million budget I mentioned earlier? Yeah, apparently the director Yamazaki said he wished he had that budget. Which makes me wonder what their budget was and what could they have done with a budget closer to the American Godzilla movies of over 150 million doll hairs. Because when I tell you this movie looks stellar with that budget, I mean it. They definitely put the money where it counted, and for the most part, Godzilla itself looks incredible. Now, I'm not gonna lie, there were some moments that didn't look so good. I liked the scene with the tanks shooting Godzilla, and if it wasn't for the context of the scene, I might have actually laughed at how bad the tanks looked. Getting real though, the CGI, Godzilla really, isn't groundbreaking. It's not the best I've seen this year. For the most part, it's not seamless. Godzilla doesn't always look very real or in the scene, but let's be honest, the movie doesn't call for that. Additionally, considering their budget versus the American film's budgets, I think the movie looks incredible. We've finally made it to the acting, you guys, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm doing all this talking, I feel like I'm running in place. Now that we've made it to the acting, I feel like we're getting there. The entire cast is easy to connect with, and they all deliver compelling performances, but I just want to talk about Ryunosuke Kamiki as Koichi Shikishima and Minami Hamabe as Noriko Oishi. Kamiki as Shikishima. I don't want to talk about the character too much because I don't want to spoil anything, but Kamiki really brings Shikishima to life and really pulls us into those low lows of the character and his survivor's guilt that I mentioned earlier. He does a spectacular job really showing us what the character has gone through internally and kind of what he thinks about the world around him. I'm trying to be vague so I don't spoil anything, you guys, so hopefully I'm making sense. Finally, Minami Hamabe as Noriko Oishi. She is a dream. I love everything about her character, and she brings such a warmth and hope, not just to the story, but to Shikishima as well. Hamabe is extremely easy to connect with, and she also does an incredible job of showing us what Noriko has been through and her motivation. If you made it this far into the episode, thank you, because I feel like we've been here for a while. At this point, I would be saying, let's just put it all out there, but I feel like I've been putting it all out there for a while now, so let's just wrap it up as nicely as we can. I love this movie. I gasped out loud. You know when you're seeing something you cannot believe and you've got your hands tight over your mouth in shock? Literally me. My heart stopped at one point in this movie. It really pulled so many genuine emotions from me. Oh, and before you think I watched this movie and did not cry, you're wrong. I cried twice. The second time was like gross and a little loud, but when I say I was invested in these characters, I was invested. Earlier in the episode, I did talk about the real history behind Godzilla, and I personally think it's really important to know, but I will say you don't actually need to know any of that for this movie to resonate with you. This movie is a masterpiece, whether you know that history and symbolism or not. One thing I feel like I gotta say is if you're expecting thick American Godzilla to punch monsters, then you're probably gonna be disappointed. Personally, I went in expecting a good movie and I walked out experiencing the best Godzilla movie. Have you seen Godzilla -1 yet? If you saw the movie already, what did you think about it? You guys, this movie lives up to the hype and beyond. It's a breathtaking film that will make you look at Godzilla differently, especially if you, like myself, have grown accustomed to seeing thick American Godzilla. Honestly, this Godzilla, terrifying. It's a cinematic accomplishment that truly transcends the genre with what I felt was a flawless blend of the human emotion and action. The CGI for the budget, honestly, where it counts, is amazing, and it really immerses you into the movie. And honestly, when the CGI is not the best, it doesn't even take you out of the movie at all. The title, you guys, I read online that the movie is titled -1 because after the war, Japan had been reduced to 0. Godzilla appears and plunges the country into a negative state. Please. Before I get into the outro, if you are still here with me and you're interested in this movie at all, I don't ever say this because I know everything is a matter of opinion. Just because I like something doesn't mean it's good. This is not the case with this movie. Objectively speaking, this movie is a masterpiece. So do yourself a favor and watch this movie on the largest screen possible. With that said, I somehow didn't include this in my script, but this movie is entirely spoken in Japanese. So there are subtitles, and I know subtitles are not for everyone, but if you're interested at all, do not let that stop you from watching this movie. Alright, Godzilla fans, that brings us to the end of the episode. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you very much. Check out the description below for a link to the podcast if you're watching on YouTube. Please consider leaving the video a thumbs up. As always, thank you so much for hanging out with me and for catching today's episode. You can listen to new episodes every Friday. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify, follow me on Instagram, all the things so you don't miss the next movie we're going to be talking about. If you want to know my thoughts on The Boy and the Heron, then you can check that episode out. I'll put a tab in the top corner of the video on YouTube, and if you're listening on the podcast, you can check the episode out there too. There will be no more episodes posted on YouTube for the rest of the month. All of the following episodes will be podcast exclusives that you can listen to on Spotify. Totally killer. That slasher movie that I have been pushing off for like months, we're gonna finally talk about it. Rebel Moon, I've been talking about it for the last few episodes. I'm really excited about that movie, but honestly, I think I need to brace myself for the emotional stress of it being a part 1. I also completely forgot about the Netflix movie Leave the World Behind until my sister mentioned it the other day, and then I started seeing a bunch of TikToks on it, so I'm gonna be watching that one too. Finally, that movie that I mentioned the past few episodes that I wanted to watch with my family during the holidays, It's a Wonderful Knife. It seems like a fun movie, and I'm a sucker for slasher costumes, and this one looks really interesting. Again, there will be no more episodes posted to YouTube for the rest of the month. Godzilla -1 and The Boy and the Heron episodes will be the last episodes posted on YouTube until January. So I hope you'll join me on YouTube and the podcast, especially for those exclusive episodes. I would love to hear from you guys, so please let me know your thoughts on today's episode or just your thoughts on the movie that we talked about today in the comment section on YouTube or on Spotify. I've got the Q&A, I've got polls, so check it out. I want to know what you think, so let me know wherever you are listening or on Instagram at a.rocket.review, and I'll talk to you guys on the podcast next week. But until the next episode, spread positivity, be safe, take care of yourself, and happy holidays. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.